Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Post. My next guest is the social media manager at Celigo, an enterprise grade iPaaS platform, and has been working in social media for over 3 years now. He's experienced in SaaS, B2B, and B2C businesses, has two adopted dogs, and collects rare cactuses. Additionally, he loves to cook, try out new social media related software, and work on DIY projects around the house. Without further ado, please welcome to the show, Jordan Tenenbaum. Jordan, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Let's rock and roll. I'm good to go.
Amazing. Look, I have been so eager to sit down and chat with you because, first of all, you're doing some pretty incredible things at Celigo. And also, I completely admire your personal brand, and it's actually how we became connected. So I admire everything you're doing on the personal branding side and on the corporate side. And I'm just excited to dive in and learn a little bit more about your strategy. But I know you didn't always work in social. So I would love if you could give us a brief background on your professional journey and how you made your way to Celigo.
Yeah, absolutely. I started, and thank you, by the way. I appreciate all the kind words. So, yeah, I started in sales right out of college. That was my first job after I tried to start my own business and failed rather quickly. So, I got that out of my system and started working in sales. I was in sales for 7 years as an account executive and a BDR or SDR, whichever you prefer, cold calling businesses, getting yelled at, getting angry emails. And after 7 years, I said, this is enough. Mental health is super important. Happiness in your job is important. Salary and pay and lack of stress and things are important. And right around the pandemic, I was lucky enough to transition into a role as a social media manager. I was actually brought on as a content manager and quickly within that first role pivoted to social media manager just because it was a whole bunch of work and there was not really someone to handle it. And my boss at the time knew my chops in terms of writing from cold outreach or emails or LinkedIn, and said, hey, I think you'd be pretty good at this. You're a millennial. You grew up with social media. Why don't you try this out? And I started doing that full time ever since. So it's been, yeah, like you said, over 3 years. And I've absolutely fallen in love. The work's fun. And I'm not only happy, but just incredibly lucky to be in this position and finally find a job that I actually enjoy. I think most people probably don't love their jobs. And I think social media managers are some of the few, according to a whole bunch of studies out there, that actually do. And just in my own opinion, they genuinely love your jobs. And that's my transition from sales to social media.
I love that. And I think you have a very unique perspective from working in sales. I feel like a lot of our sales counterparts as social media managers maybe don't understand social media managers and vice versa. So I feel like you have a very unique perspective in that regard, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more with the strategy side of things. But before we jump into that, what is Celigo and what is your job as a social media manager there entail? Are you doing other things? To give us a little bit of background on that.
Sure. So Celigo is a really cool company. Essentially, if you have two pieces of software that don't talk to each other, we allow them to talk to each other without manual work. So we essentially automate the flow of data between applications, not just one-to-one application, but essentially through a company's entire tech stack, whether that's e-commerce, whether that's retail, whether that's just any type of business. Essentially, if you're manually moving data between applications, if you're using spreadsheets, if you're copy pasting, if you're having to code your own APIs, we get rid of all of that and automate it. It's something called iPaaS, which is integration platform as a service. It's a really cool industry with some really big players. That's Celigo. We've been around for 15 or so years now, right around there, founded by our CEO, Jan, who's an excellent guy and a great leader. Celigo is just a fantastic place, and they have a really cool product. So I'm proud to work there because I've worked at some places where I'm not always proud of the product, and this is one where I definitely am. And in terms of what I do, I run all things social media. So if you see anything on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at all that has Celigo branding, it's coming from me and my brain. I'm really fortunate that I have two really cool bosses, Carrie and Rico, who pretty much have given me full control. I don't have to run posts by my bosses. I don't have to clear things. I'm just able to be creative, write really interesting copy, try to be funny, make some mediocre me. And yeah, I edit a whole bunch of videos. I create social cards. I manage employee advocacy. I help with employer branding. I ghostwrite for quite a few of our leaders and executives as well as consult. I'm not being paid. It's just internal consulting in terms of helping them with social media. I teach a
Mhm.
lot of different groups, whether that's sales or customer enablement, about the importance of creating a brand and engaging on social media in terms of driving revenue and potential customers into the top of the sales funnel. And I run our podcast, which is the Celigo Technology Leaders Podcast. You can find us on YouTube. And that's a short list of what I do. But yeah, my job is to grow our brand, to grow our footprint, to establish our brand voice, and make sure that when people think of iPass, they think of Celigo.
I love it. And I know I will every time I think of iPads from now on. And you're definitely doing a lot. And I want to rewind for a second and really talk about that transition from social to sales, because I feel like that's not something you hear a lot. You hear a lot about maybe marketers that go into sales. But when you transitioned, what surprised you? What did you find you enjoyed the most? Were there any major challenges that you found yourself facing?
In terms of what surprised me, I think the main thing was like how fun the job is, how creative I can be. I never really thought of myself as a creative type, but as I quickly realized, whether you're using Canva or Photoshop or Adobe or a million other products out there that help you create, this role is really creative, and it brought that out of me. And it really was fun. So there was that. I think the other thing that was a little bit surprising is, especially as an SDR, unfortunately, you're kind of have a bad rep. You're shunned into this like sales cold calling corner. And when I transitioned into social media, it seemed like everybody really wanted to get to know me and really liked me and wanted to collaborate on some project to make something known about their department or highlight one of their employees or something like that. And so I just, coming out of the pandemic, or I guess going through the pandemic, it became a much more social role, which I really appreciated. Terms of what did I enjoy most, do you mean specifically about the transition, or do you mean just about social media management in general? Because I can answer one, the other, or both.
I think about social media management in general. What did you really find you enjoyed the most after
Sure.
working in sales?
Yeah, I think it was just like the change in perception to me. Like my work is incredibly public. Like people see my work all day, every day, all eyes on me, like to quote Tupac. And I wonder if that's the first time anyone's quoted Tupac in this podcast
I think
series.
so.
Perfect. I'll take that. Yeah, just people wanted to work with me, and everybody knew who I was, and I just felt a lot more appreciated and respected. And
Mm,
I wanted to do that for other people. So whether it's employer branding and I'm highlighting employees, or I'm sharing a post about someone about why they love Celigo, I want other people to feel that same like appreciation, and that I want to, as long as they're okay with being
yeah.
publicized. So that was a big change, just being enjoyed and connecting with so many different people across departments. And in
Mm,
terms of challenges, I'll be honest, it wasn't super hard for me. I've grown up using social media like a lot of, I mean, I'm 30, so a lot of people my age have been around this for a long time. I also, like I said, I was in sales for so long, so I had a ton of writing and copy experience. I went to college to be a food and travel writer, which obviously didn't work out, which is why I'm not in some cool location. I'm stuck in my office. But I really do love writing. And when you're writing copy, or creating any form of content, really, that wasn't necessarily hard. So the transition was relatively smooth. But in terms uh, of challenges, it's really, I had never established a brand voice when I first started, and so I really needed to think
mhm.
about not sounding like myself too much. Hopefully, there's a little personality in our brand voice, but I think probably the biggest challenge was like finding the line of myself versus the brand, and where those can synergize to create a good brand voice. Sorry, that was a long answer to your questions, but just wanted to make sure I touched on all of them.
No, no need to apologize. I think what you touched upon is fascinating, because when you think about a salesperson, they have very big impact on the business at large. And I love how, as a social media manager, you are also, you don't think about it, but social media managers, their work is public. They have a direct line to customers and prospects, and you're speaking with these people every day. And you also have such a potential to make a huge impact, because you are talking to them, and the content that you're creating is maybe the first time someone is seeing your brand, or like maybe they're throughout the funnel and they could see something that's pushing them farther along. So I love that you are still making that impact on customers, and also just internally as well. And I have been following along Celigo, and I am absolutely amazed with the growth that you guys have seen. You nearly tripled every social metric, which I really want to dive into. What are some of the initiatives and what is the content that really propelled forward this growth without giving too much away? Could you share a little bit about your strategy?
Sure. I don't want to give up too much secret sauce, but I'm happy to share. There's a few things. I think the main thing and that a lot of brands lack is consistency. And that's not necessarily a secret. Any social media manager worth their salt or whatever the saying is should know that consistency is really important. And I see so many brands, especially like on LinkedIn, for example, if they might have 100,000 followers or 300,000 followers or 600,000 followers, and they're posting like every 3 days, and it's just such a waste. And so
Yeah.
immediately my big initiative was like just start posting a lot and start figuring out what works and what doesn't. So it was a lot of A/B testing, but it was just consistent posting. You start at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2 p.m., 4 p.m., sometimes later, depending on the content. And it's like doing that for like months on end to get people used to, hey, this is a company that has a lot to say, they're interesting, and let's consume their content. So that was one initiative, is just like, let's do this, let's be consistent. Some other things that I think were really important were like employee advocacy. And this means getting the entire company to participate on social media. And whether you're using a tool to automate that, or you're encouraging it internally via Slack, or just the team is doing that on their own. The way that I look at it, let's say I have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn and I make a post and 100 people see it. If we had 300 Celigo employees do that, imagine like the multiplication effect of how many eyes, and I'm sorry, I'm bad at math, so I'm not even going to try to do that number, but how many eyes would be on Celigo's content. And it would be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. And I think that's just super important, getting everyone on board, especially at a big company where it takes a minute or two to repost or share your own thoughts on something. And the value of not only doing that, but like I said, having your team do that consistently has been incredibly effective in terms of social metrics. A few other things that are just a little bit more, a little smaller, but important nonetheless, would be employer branding. And I know I talked about that a little bit, but like having an employee of the week, or sharing like the cooks of Celigo and showing the cool foods that they make and are pulling those from Slack, or the pets of Celigo, and just making the company not boring, not robotic, not like 95% of the companies that you see on social media where their content seems like some guy had no time, or girl, fed the content to ChatGPT and said, write me a post. And I will let ChatGPT help me come up with like puns or maybe rewrite something, but I'll always take that rewritten version and rewrite it myself. So no ChatGPT, but just ensuring that the content is interesting.
Yeah.
Few other things, and I guess just in terms of employer branding, just to finish that off, sorry, I got a little lost in my thoughts there, but you just want your employees to be valued. That encourages them to participate on social media more, and it just makes your brand seem more interesting and makes it easier to stick in people's minds, attract top talent, so many things. So employer branding is important. And I'd say the last two things, one would be challenges. And when I say that, I literally mean like a TikTok challenge. And we don't necessarily use TikTok, but we've had the Celigo swag challenge, or the battle station challenge, where the Celigo swag challenge, you have a picture with your Celigo mug and your Celigo hat and your Celigo jacket. And, we had like 150 people post photos of that, like within 2 days, as well as some of our partners and customers jumped on wearing Celigo merch. And that had a massive spike in terms of views on our social media channels as well as website in general. And the battle station challenge, where you take a picture of your desk and your multiple monitors and your cool speakers and your microphone and all that. And that had a very similar effect. And that's just one thing that I think doesn't take a lot of effort. You can just say, hey guys, take a picture in your Celigo swag, and everyone does it. It takes everyone 2 minutes, and it's a really cool way to cash in on virality. And the final thing is, like I said, a lot of brands are so boring, and it's important to come up with like funny content. Like I have a video that I've been waiting on of my boss juggling. I have 3 videos of him juggling. I don't know how he's so good at juggling, but that's like goofy content that just
Yeah.
highlights an employee and gets people engaged. Whether you're making memes, like that's another super low effort way to talk about iPass, or automating business, or hating Excel spreadsheets. Those ideas and concepts are universal and really easy to put in memes, which are also universal. Or even just like goofy things, like every Friday we have an animal update, or I post about animals that are lurking around our headquarters. And we saw like a manta ray or a stingray. And there's this whole trail of
Wow.
posts all about Stingy the stingray, or should we name him Ray? And there's like internal conflict. Or someone sent in a video of a bird flying away at sunset. And it was like, oh, Igor the egret left work early, gonna have to talk to HR. And it's so goofy, but those posts
Yeah.
kill. People just
Mhm.
love that because they're sick of boring crap on social media. And so
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I've done that have really helped. But all of those things fall under the umbrella of consistency, because you got to just keep on doing it and get people used to seeing that content.
Totally. And I think especially now with the widespread use of ChatGPT, anyone can post on social. Anyone can go in there and tell it to write you a post and immediately post it. So I feel like now it is getting harder to cut through the noise and stand out. But those posts that show that human aspect, that show people that are funny, that are relatable, those go such a long way. Because yes, we're in tech, we're in B2B, but you're talking to real people. And just because they might wear a suit during the day, they go home and they're real people and they like to laugh. They want to be related to. So when you add that human element, it really goes a long way in the business aspect, because people buy from people, but people buy from people they like. And having a faceless brand on social just is not going to cut it. And it's almost 2024. Like, it's just not going to cut it anymore. People want that human connection and we're craving it. So I think what you're doing is really incredible. And it's also really showing in your follower count. Now, you guys exploded. And I would love to get your take. I know there's a huge debate. Is follower count just a vanity metric? We know it matters, but does it actually matter? What does it mean for the business? If you have 1 million followers, do you have 1 million customers? What's your take on follower count? And also, if you could add in a few of the tactics that you think really led to that explosive growth.
Sure. So that's a tough one. Is it a vanity metric? Is it not? I'd say yes and no. If a brand has no followers, it's hard to get. They might have the best product in the world, but people are going to think, why is no one following them?
Mhm.
Additionally, there's people on LinkedIn who have 300,000 followers, and the stuff they post is mind-numbingly dumb. And
Yeah.
it really depends. I think having a lot of followers is important if you have a good brand with good customers and a good product. If you have engaged followers that aren't bots, obviously, that are engaging with your content and kind of show, because there's a lot of brands. I know I mentioned this with individuals, but there's brands that have hundreds of thousands of followers. They make a post on LinkedIn and like 12 people like it. And it's like,
Yeah.
what is the disconnect?
Yeah, what's
Or
going on here?
it's weird. It's really weird. And so I think follower count is a good thing to keep in mind. And obviously, the more followers, the better, because someone's going to look at a business with 100,000 followers and say, wow, there's probably something there. Maybe I'll check it out. It's called social
Mhm.
proof. It's one of the principles of persuasion laid out by Robert Cialdini. Robert, if you're listening, which I know you're not, hope I made you proud. But yeah, it's a good thing to keep in mind, but it doesn't mean everything, because there's like plenty of people, even executives at my company, that are incredibly smart and they just don't care about followers. And so they
Yeah.
might only have 1,000 or 2,000 followers, and that's fine. They're still geniuses. They're still executives. They're still making a ton of money, but followers don't necessarily have to matter to them. So it's always different for the individual. It's different for the business. But I think in general, the more the better, but take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it definitely adds to your credibility. But if none of those followers are actually engaging, then what's the point? You want meaningful conversations happening on social, and that's how community is built. But I have a lot of conversations with other social media managers, and I've had conversations with customers, and they come to me and say, I have a follower count number that I have to hit. How do I do it? So I would love to hear your insights on, which I know sometimes that's not always the best goal to have because you do want it to be authentic. But if someone is really looking to supercharge their LinkedIn follower count, what would your advice be?
You're going to have to dedicate the next year of your life to making a post every single day. That's how it worked for me. The majority of content creators on LinkedIn that I've known have posted similar things, where I posted every day for a year before I started getting engagement. And
Mm.
that's the fact. Like, it's an uncomfortable place to put yourself out there, and not everyone is cut from that cloth. And I'm not saying I'm special or amazing. I personally don't care what people think. So I post what I want on LinkedIn. And yeah, it's really dedication, it's consistency, it's a lot of the similar principles that apply to Celigo as a brand and our followers. But I think the other important thing is sometimes people post about what they want to post about or things that they're maybe not an expert in. And LinkedIn, at least in my mind, is not the place for that. You can post it, sure,
Mhm.
but you're not going to get any traction. And so I think people
Yeah.
want to hear from people talk about salespeople talk about sales lessons. They want to hear social media managers talk about social media growth. They want to hear executive leadership talk about how the company they led IPO'd or something like that. And the key is consistency. The key is posting about what you know. And the key is creating original content, not I mean, you can take someone else's content and remix it. I think that's totally acceptable, especially if it's
Mhm.
relevant to you and your brand. Um, but it's a lot of dedication. You got to be creative. You got to teach yourself how to use things like Canva. The other day I made, it was like a goofy, like, the evolution image of like
I saw
fish
that.
to fish to
Yes, I
monkey
loved it.
to caveman to hunched over guy in a computer. And it's stupid, but it took me 5 minutes to make that. And you got to learn tools that are going to allow you to be creative and share things that people haven't seen. And I have a running Slack chat with myself where I just screenshot random stuff I see on the internet and I send it to that Slack. And the next day I look at it and I think, what could I do? How could I do that? And if people do have this specific follower count that they want to get to, it's it's not Instagram where you can take pictures of yourself looking cool or doing cool things or being on a beach. LinkedIn is not the place for that. You actually have to
Yeah.
like really use your brain and be insightful and create value and teach people lessons and prove that over and over again until people
Mhm.
realize that you are not just a dummy posting things on the internet. You're actually a thought leader, and thought leaders actually have thoughts that matter. So
Mhm.
that's my 2 cents to folks looking to grow the brand and or their own brand, excuse me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's where that consistency really is key because if you're only posting 3 times a week, you're not really going to see that growth because the idea is to keep showing up in people's feeds. And if you're not posting enough, you're never going to get there. So I think that's also where that consistency really is key. And I know another challenge for social media managers is they're doing a lot outside of social media. And I know for you, you mentioned you're ghostwriting for your executives. You also produce and host a podcast, you lead employee advocacy. So I'd love to end off the show with just a few of the little tactics and things that you're using to optimize your workflow so that you can manage social media and all the other things outside of social media. And please get as tactical as you can. We love to get super tactical on the show. So please get as specific as you can.
Sure. So there's a lot of technology and tools out there that make life easier, whether you're starting at something basic like Grammarly or Calendly, Grammarly to make sure you don't sound like a goofball when you're writing stuff online, or Calendly just to make scheduling meetings quicker. But in my mind, I just want to be as efficient as possible. And there's some people who use Photoshop and they're adjusting light levels and the white balance and this pixel. I honestly, I don't have time for that. I need to be
Yeah.
quick. So I'm using Canva. Like I said, with writing, I'm using Grammarly or Hemingway to make sure that the content that I'm creating is like really easily digestible. I made a post on this on my LinkedIn recently of the top tools for social media managers, whether you're using Oktopost or Hootsuite or Sprout Social in terms of scheduling your content so that you don't have to log into every single platform. And I really hope no social media managers are doing that these days.
Yeah.
But like a program like that to allow you to tag posts as part of a campaign and then go back and look at the analytics, rather than manually counting them and putting them in a spreadsheet.
Mm.
um, Tools like Letterdrop to automate employee advocacy and get people to engage with content or automatically share it to Slack to a specific channel. Oh God, there's so many different tools. And of course, now, right now that you ask me, I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, there's Adobe has a new tool that uses AI to help you create customized fonts rather than like having to do overlays in Photoshop to create your own font. Um,
Mhm.
Man, there's just so many. I wish I had my tool list in front of me right now, but yeah, there's just I don't want to give away too much, as I said.
Yeah.
Got to maintain a little secrecy, but there is, like you said, social media managers have a ton to do. I'm sure you know this, and if you're not using tools to Like even ChatGPT, just to generate an idea, or if you have a concept and you want to just see it in a longer form before you rewrite it on your own. Like just
Mhm.
tools like that are incredibly important. There's a whole suite of AI tools that I also enjoy using, whether that's creating art or cool images or text to video or things like that. Just whatever tools people find that they end up liking, it's important to really figure out how to use them in the best way possible and use them to be as efficient as possible, because otherwise social media managers would just be drowning in work.
Yes, absolutely. And we are nearing the end of the show here, but I had one more question that just popped in mind as I was hearing you speak, and I just can't let you leave the show without asking you this. So, when it comes to Twitter or X, it's so hard to call it X. I'm just so ingrained in saying Twitter. But I know for us, things got a little weird on Twitter and we took a little bit of a break. And now we're starting to rebuild, and I'm posting like multiple times a day. So I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on X, and how often are you tweeting, and do you see it being a part of your strategy long term?
Twitter is, I consider it the way salespeople consider Salesforce. It's like a necessary evil. Some people love it, some people hate it. That's just my personal opinion, regardless of what you think of the brand or the CEO or whatever his job is nowadays. To me, if there's a big lull in a social media channel or nothing posted at all, but there's an account there, I always think, what's going on? Like, why didn't they just copy some content and put it there? It's not that hard. So in my mind, and our LinkedIn following is really big. Our Twitter following is relatively small. So I post there almost as much as I do on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram from our company page, just because I think it's important that the people who do like Twitter, they still get to see our content and they're reminded of us. There's some people who love Twitter and hate LinkedIn, or love Twitter and hate Facebook. And I'm going to supply content to them no matter what.
Yeah.
I think for brands that have a smaller presence on Twitter, keep posting. It doesn't hurt. It's not a huge deal. You're not offending anyone. You're not going to piss anyone off. You're just going to keep your existing followers engaged. For brands that are big on Twitter, shake what your mama gave you. Use your following. Get as many impressions and draw as many Twitter users into your company page or to whatever event you're promoting. And so I just say keep treating it as just another arm of the social media octopus. Well, that was a good
Yeah.
octo pun there. I didn't even mean
Yeah, I love that. And for anyone listening in, I have been really loving HubSpot's Twitter. I don't know if you've seen it recently, but they are hilarious. And I'm loving all of the trends and like all the trends from TikTok coming over. I'm really liking it. And I've seen some backlash a little bit on LinkedIn, like people like questioning why they're doing this strategy. And other people are chiming in saying like they're being relatable and this is what we need on social. So I'm loving that shift. And yeah, if
Do you
anyone,
think that's appropriate for big brands to be posting? I mean, I want to know your opinion because I'm for it. I'm like, heck yeah, I think that's good. Like,
yeah,
it seems like you're a fan. Is that the case of big brands posting maybe less serious content?
I think it is because, first of all, when you think to who the demo, like who's buying right now, it is millennials. And that's the kind of stuff that is relatable to them and makes them laugh. And when you're thinking about like the B2B buyer journey, most of the people, 95% are not in the market to buy. So you need to stay top of mind. So when you are ready to buy, you think of that brand. And when companies are doing that kind of funny stuff or you feel related to them, you remember them and then it sticks in your head. So I love it because it personally, like I laughed out loud yesterday reading a post from HubSpot. And I love that this big brand is being relatable and talking about things that are going on in other like social networks and like trending on TikTok. Like I personally love that. And I think that is how you cater to your current audience. Like B2B buyers that are like in the process of looking at different software, they're millennials, and that's the kind of stuff that they're also enjoying. So, yeah, I think creating content that speaks their language as well, like I am totally here for it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I think at least at Celigo, a lot of the folks who are more senior than me, they like that kind of content too. And they might not be millennials, but they share it with me. And our CPO recently reached out with a Twitter trend and sent it to me. And was like, "Hey, I think you might like this." And I was like, "Hell yeah, this is great!"
Yeah.
Because I think as much as it is impactful and relevant for millennials, I think the majority of people enjoy laughing. And of course, there's always going to be
Mhm.
a crusty curmudgeon saying, I don't like the dance trend. Don't look
Yeah.
then, grandpa. If people don't like that, then that's okay. They'll follow. They might unfollow on Twitter, but they're still going to follow on LinkedIn, and they're still
Yeah.
going to consume my content anyway. So I'm all for that. And that's, like I said, that's what we do at Celigo. We post goofy, funny content sometimes. 90% of it is relatively serious, but the goofy, funny stuff performs really well. So
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Me too. And those are the brands that are standing out because they're being different. So stepping out a little bit really does go a long way. Absolutely. So I have one final question for you that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what is one thing you wish your colleagues in other departments knew about working in social media?
I do get paid to make memes. No, it's funny. Quick story before I answer. I was in the office the other day and I was in the process of making a meme for work. And my colleague Steven came by, who I had never met in person. He's from out of town. He was in the office for a product offsite. And he was like, wait, like they pay you to make memes? And I was like, this is my job, man.
Yeah.
But no, I think the thing that I wish people knew is, I'd say two things. First, social media is not like a last minute thought. It deserves time and respect and notification, just like any other department. And just because you might have something that you thought of last minute doesn't mean it's going to be posted tomorrow at 8 a.m. That slot's already
Mhm.
filled. I want to be, and Sligo's really good about this. So this is just more generic, but I want to be included. I want to be part of the conversation. And I should be, because if you want that content to see our 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, you got to let me know so I can post it and post it at the right time with the right graphic and the right hashtags and the right link with the right UTM. I think I just want to be part of the conversation early on. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing is, I really do love my job. I love working with all these departments and I want to collaborate with you. I'm a busy person. And if you have something that you do want shared or you want put publicly on social media channels, just talk to me. And I'm all for that, because the more that I can collaborate with the folks on my team, the more content I have to share and the less original
Mhm.
content I have to create. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm all ears when it comes to those things. Just let me know early. Um, and then I'm all game. And I guess maybe, I know I said two, but maybe I'll throw in a third. This is the best job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sales was cool, but I'm a
Yeah.
social media manager from here on out.
I love it. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. And every time I ask this question, I often get that response is social media managers want that seat at the table and they want to be looped into conversations from the very beginning. And I think we're well on our way there, especially because of thought leaders like you and sharing your journey on LinkedIn and building your personal brand. You share so much incredible information, which I'm learning a lot from you. And I learned a lot from you here today. Thank you so much for joining me behind the post. I cannot wait to set this episode live. I feel like it is just packed with so many amazing insights. So thank you so much, Jordan, for joining me today.
Thank you. This was awesome. I really appreciate it, Olivia. And if y'all are listening, thanks for listening to me ramble for a while. I appreciate it.